My husband and I arrived at the condo we planned to buy from a foreign seller. I kept quiet, pretending I didn't understand a word of Spanish. I had my reasons. But then I heard one sentence, just one, and my whole body stiffened. Asterisk, I couldn't believe what she said. Asterisk. Welcome to the Betty Stories channel. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We hope you enjoy this beautiful story. Kesha closed her bedroom door slowly and pulled out a worn workbook from its hiding spot beneath a pile of folded blankets. The edges of the pages curled from use, and colorful sticky tabs peeked out in every direction. She switched on the small desk lamp and turned it low so the light wouldn't spill through the crack under the door. On her bed lay an exercise notebook filled with neat handwriting, Spanish vocabulary, practice sentences, verb charts. In the living room, the TV blasted at full volume. Marcus was watching another basketball game, yelling at the screen as if the players could hear him. Perfect. He'd be busy for at least 2 hours. For 8 months, this had been Kesha's secret ritual. Every night, when Marcus worked late or drowned himself in sports, she sat with her textbooks and her headphones, whispering foreign sounds, testing her pronunciation on an app, feeling her mind sharpen in ways she hadn't felt in years. It had started as simple curiosity, a pop-up ad offering free Spanish lessons. But the more she learned, the more she felt something inside her awaken. The words didn't just form sentences. They rebuilt pieces of herself she thought she'd lost. It was like solving a puzzle, except the picture it formed was her. But Marcus knew nothing of this, and Kesha planned to keep it that way. 2 years earlier, when she mentioned taking a floral design course, he had laughed so loudly she felt the shame burn in her ears. Kesha, come on, he had said, not even glancing up from his tablet. You always quit everything. Yoga, painting, whatever that candle-making phase was. Why waste money? I wasn't quitting, she had whispered. I just wanted to try. Try. You have a new obsession every month. Focus on the house. That's actually useful. Back then, she swallowed her words, and the resentment settled deep, like dust in corners no one cleans. 6 months later, when she timidly mentioned restarting yoga, he cut her off again. We can't waste money on nonsense. Do you have any idea how expensive bills are? Let's be realistic for once. After that, she stopped sharing anything. Dreams, ideas, wishes, she locked them away. What was the point of speaking when every answer was a dismissal? Marcus planned their vacations. He chose their furniture. He decided when guests came over. She cooked, cleaned, agreed, and eventually stopped protesting altogether. She became a quiet outline of a woman present, but transparent. So tonight, like many nights, she poured herself tea from a thermos she kept hidden to avoid disturbing Marcus. She sat cross-legged on the bed, whispering Spanish verbs that made her feel alive. This secret was her rebellion, her sanctuary, the only corner of her life Marcus couldn't touch. Outside the room, the commentator suddenly shouted. Marcus cheered loudly. Someone must have scored. He was probably on the phone with one of his friends, laughing that carefree laugh he hadn't shared with her in years. Kesha looked up, listening to him. For a moment, sadness tugged at her. The man she married 15 years ago wasn't this one. Back then, Marcus cared. He listened. He asked for her opinion. They dreamed together long walks, tiny apartments filled with plans, late night talks about their future children. He used to call her *mi luz, *my light. But life changed him. Or success did. He earned well, no very well, and with money came a hard edge, a superiority he never tried to hide. Whenever she disagreed, he reminded her she only earned grocery money. If it weren't for me, he once said during an argument, you'd still be living with roommates somewhere. And Kesha, terrified he was right, stayed silent. They never had children. Years of tests, treatments, hopes rising and falling. Then silence. The topic became a wound both avoided. Yet Kesha still dreamed quietly of holding a baby, humming lullabies in the dark, teaching tiny fingers to walk across the living room floor. But dreams were things she kept to herself now, just like her Spanish. Just like everything else Marcus had never bothered to see. But Kesha never said any of this out loud, not the longing for a child, not the hurt, not the loneliness. She was afraid Marcus would throw her own fears back at her. Asterisk that it was her fault. Asterisk that she couldn't even do this one thing. In the last few months, a quiet, cold wall had risen between them. Marcus stayed at work later and later, coming home with the same irritated sigh, the same tired eyes, the same dismissive shrug. At dinner, he barely looked up from his phone. Kesha tried. She really tried. She asked about his day, shared tiny stories from her office, even attempted jokes. But every answer was a grunt, a nod, a monosyllable. 5 minutes later, he'd vanish into the living room. The TV would roar, and Kesha would sit alone with her cooling plate. Weekends weren't much different. He went fishing with friends, or shut himself in the garage, tinkering with tools he barely used. Still, Kesha kept trying. She cooked his favorite meals, his mother's recipe for smothered pork chops, buttery mashed potatoes, warm cornbread. She suggested a walk, a movie, a simple night out. Every time, he pushed her away. Kesha, I'm exhausted. I work all week, and then I have to entertain you too. Let me breathe. So she retreated. She washed dishes, scrubbed floors, stared out the window at strangers, living louder, fuller lives than hers, and wondered when exactly her own marriage had slipped into quiet ruin. When had they become polite strangers, sharing bills instead of dreams? But she didn't want to give up. 15 years couldn't just evaporate. Love couldn't simply disappear, right? So when Marcus suddenly announced they should look for a new, bigger apartment, something more suitable, Kesha felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was their chance. A shared project. A fresh beginning. A new chapter in a story that desperately needed one. Asterisk, maybe we can find our way back. Asterisk. They began browsing listings or, rather, Marcus browsed, and Kesha sat beside him, nodding when she was supposed to. He swiped through photos, rejecting most before she even formed an opinion. That's too far from the metro, he'd say. Too expensive. Out of budget. Bad neighborhood. You don't know anything about this stuff, Kes. Eventually, she stopped offering her thoughts. What was the point? Weeks became a month. They visited condos on weekends, each time returning more exhausted, more irritated, more distant. Something was always wrong, the kitchen too small, the hallway too narrow, the building too old, the neighbors too noisy, the price slightly too high. Marcus complained, nitpicked, argued with realtors, frowned at everything. At times, Kesha wondered if he even wanted to move at all. Maybe he was just stretching the process as an excuse to stay distant. She couldn't tell anymore. Then one evening, while she sat in bed practicing Spanish grammar, the bedroom door suddenly burst open. Marcus didn't knock. He never knocked. Kesha jumped, heart hammering. She snapped the notebook shut and shoved it under her pillow so quickly her fingers trembled. Kesha, look. He thrust his phone toward her without noticing anything out of place. This is it. The one. 3 bedrooms, great neighborhood, good price. It's being sold by a foreigner, apparently a Spanish guy. We're going tomorrow morning. Kesha exhaled shakily. He hadn't noticed. Thank God. She took the phone, scanning the listing. And truly it was beautiful. High ceilings, sunlit rooms, a large kitchen with marble counters, 2 bathrooms, a glass-enclosed balcony overlooking a quiet courtyard. The photos were practically glowing. The owner clearly loved the place. It's really nice, she murmured. Why is he selling? He's going back to his home country. Says so right here. Marcus snatched the phone back. Worked here for a few years, contract's over. I already contacted him. Tomorrow at 11. You coming? Of course, she said. Good. I'm tired of hunting every weekend. I hope this one works out. He stretched. Why are you sitting in here anyway? Just reading before bed. Ma'am, don't stay up too late. Early morning. He left, shutting the door behind him. Silence settled around her. Kesha stared at the door, then slowly pulled her notebook from beneath the pillow. On the back page lay the vocabulary list she had written earlier. Expressions, conversational lines. She wasn't fluent, but she could understand Spanish surprisingly well now. She could follow movies without subtitles. She read simple articles. She even wrote little notes her online instructor often praised. And suddenly a wild idea crept into her mind. What if she said nothing at the viewing? What if she pretended she didn't understand Spanish at all? Marcus always bragged about his intermediate level from his business, trips to Madrid and Barcelona. He would surely try to impress the seller by speaking Spanish, and if he did, she would hear everything. Everything Marcus and the seller discussed. Everything Marcus might hide. Everything he might not want her to know. But why? Why did she want this? Why did the idea thrill her and scare her at the same time? Kesha didn't know. She only knew that a feeling sharp, new, dangerous was waking up inside her. A feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. Something deep inside, Kesha whispered that she needed to do this. Call it instinct. Call it anxiety. Call it the quiet sixth sense women develop when they've been ignored for too many years. Maybe she wanted to test Marcus's honesty. Maybe she was tired of standing at the edge of every decision he made. Or maybe just once she wanted to use the language she had poured months into learning. To prove to herself that she wasn't helpless or simple or small. She lay in bed that night, unable to sleep. Marcus was snoring loudly beside her, sprawled across most of the mattress like always. Kesha curled up on her tiny sliver of space, afraid to move. If he woke up cranky, the whole morning would be ruined before it even began. She stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, feeling that uneasy blend of fear and excitement twist inside her. What if tomorrow changed everything? What if she heard something devastating, something she couldn't forget? What if life split into a before and after, right there in that condo? Then another thought followed, a harder, heavier one. My before is already unbearable. What more can I lose? Morning. The drive across the city, ***. They left early. The condo was in a prestigious new district, shining with glass buildings and manicured sidewalks. Marcus drove in tense silence, muttering complaints about traffic and how nobody on this planet knows how to stay in one lane anymore. Kesha stared out the window, rehearsing imaginary dialogue in her mind. What if she couldn't understand Spanish in real conversation? What if she slipped and responded accidentally? What if this whole idea was childish and foolish? At a red light, Marcus glanced at her. You're awfully quiet. Don't tell me you already hate the place. No, not at all, she said quickly. I just hope this one works out. It will. I checked everything, the paperwork, the owner's info, all clean. He smirked. And don't worry, I'll translate. You can trust me with foreigners. They're slick. These Europeans always try to pull something. Kesha folded her hands tightly in her lap. Translate. Yes. The question was, what would he translate? And what would he choose to hide? Arrival. A building that smelled of money. The building looked like something out of a magazine. Clean glass facade. Concierge desk. Polished floors. Quiet hallways with leather seats and expensive artwork. The air itself smelled like money and eucalyptus. Marcus puffed up instantly, like a man already imagining himself bragging about his new address. A good area, he said proudly. Values will go up. Smart buy. Kesha simply nodded. The elevator carried them to the 12th floor, smooth and silent. She caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Anxious, hands white-knuckling her purse strap. Calm down. Just listen. No one will suspect a thing. When the doors opened, her legs felt oddly weak. They walked down a carpeted hallway as Marcus checked the unit number. This was it. This was the moment she would step into her role, quiet, clueless, invisible. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. Marcus rang the doorbell. Footsteps approached steady, confident. Kesha inhaled deeply. You can do this. The seller appears. The door opened to reveal a man in his early fit, neatly dressed, with warm gray eyes that seemed to take everything in at once. Buenas tardes. Soy Carlos Ribera, he said with a soft Spanish accent. Offering his hand, he immediately switched into rapid, natural Spanish when he saw Marcus brighten at the opportunity. Kesha tensed. She caught every word. The greeting, the politeness, the apology for the slight mess, even though the apartment looked spotless. Marcus replied proudly in Spanish, introducing himself with exaggerated confidence. Then he jerked his thumb toward Kesha. Mi esposa, Kesha, ella no entiende nada de español, así que yo traduzco. My wife Kesha, she doesn't understand any Spanish, so I'll translate. Carlos turned to her kindly. Mucho gusto, señora. Kesha lowered her eyes shyly, playing the role perfectly. Nice to meet you, she whispered. Inside, her nerves coiled tighter. The performance had begun. Inside the condo, Carlos gestured for them to enter. The hallway gleamed with light wood flooring. A large built-in closet lined one wall, opposite a tall mirror in a carved frame. The air smelled like fresh coffee and citrus polish. Then came the living room in Kesha, nearly gasped. Massive windows framed the skyline, and a distant river. Modern furniture arranged with perfect taste. Bookshelves filled with novels, souvenirs, little pieces of someone's life. It's beautiful, she breathed in English before she could stop herself. Marcus quickly translated, muttering his own spin. Kesha likes it, but I'll decide if it's worth the price. Kesha caught the subtle twist instantly. That's not what I said. And she wondered how many times, in 15 years, he had translated her feelings into something more convenient for him. Carlos chuckled politely and continued the tour. They walked through the bedroom with a walk-in closet, a small office with a view of the river, and a guest room filled with warm sunlight. And all the while, Kesha listened carefully, silently waiting for the moment the truth would reveal itself, because something told her it would. He told them he'd lived here for 3 years, that he loved this home deeply, that his contract ended, and he had to return to his family, his wife, his grown children who had stayed behind and missed him dearly. There was a wistful warmth in his voice, a man leaving something good, not because he wanted to, but because life demanded it. Marcus nodded along and translated blandly. He says the job ended. Nothing about the family. Nothing about the sadness. Why? Kesha wondered. Why erase that part? Why erase the humanity? The negotiation. Talk shifted to the price. Carlos named a number high, yes, but fair. Marcus immediately frowned. Too expensive, he muttered to Kesha before switching back to Spanish and launching into a firm barrage of arguments. The market was unstable. Prices were dropping. They had other options. They weren't desperate. The condo wasn't ** special. Carlos countered gently but confidently. The area was prestigious. The apartment immaculate. The documents clean. Move-in ready. For 20 long minutes, they volleyed back and forth. Kesha sat there, gripping her coffee cup with both hands. Feeling like a ghost in the room. Invisible. Silent. Watching two men negotiate the shape of her future without acknowledging she had one. She wondered not for the first time when she had become just an accessory to her own life. Finally, they reached a middle ground price. A decent discount for Marcus, not a loss for Carlos. Both men shook hands, satisfied. Marcus turned to her with a triumphant smile. See, that's how you deal with them. You act like you can't be fooled, and they soften right up. Kesha forced a smile. Then Carlos spoke again seriously. Directly, and she leaned in, listening with her whole body. He said they should clarify the details. Closing dates. Required documents. Contract structure. Marcus nodded, saying yes, they would go over everything. But then Carlos added something else. Something that made Kesha's stomach tighten. Meyer Center. Para una transacción así, lo mejor es mantenerlo simple. Menos papeleo. Menos implicaciones fiscales en mi país. Look, sir. For a transaction like this, it's best to keep it simple. Less paperwork. Fewer tax implications in my country. Marcus nodded casually, but Kesha felt a jolt run through her. Simple paperwork. Less documentation. Tax implications. Something about that phrase felt off, like the beginning of trouble. I can help with the documents, Carlos continued pleasantly, unaware of the storm slowly forming beside him. Tengo un notario de confianza. He'll prepare everything quickly and cleanly. Marcus leaned in, interest sharpening his expression. And what exactly do you suggest? Well, Carlos said, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. Lo más sencillo es poner todo a nombre de un dueño. Less paperwork, fewer complications with the bank. Later, if you want to add your wife, you can do it internally. I did the same with my properties here. First everything in my name, then, poco a poco, I distributed the shares. It's convenient, efficient. Kesha felt the world tilt. Put everything in one name. In Marcus's name. Without her. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup until her knuckles turned white. Marcus didn't dismiss the idea. Didn't correct Carlos. Didn't even glance at her. He just tilted his head thoughtfully and murmured, that does sound reasonable. Why complicate things? I'll think about it. A blow without a fist. Carlos shrugged. Claro, as you wish. I'll send the notary's contact if you want more details. Yes, Marcus said. Send it. Kesha felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. Marcus hadn't translated any of this. Not one word. As if the conversation was irrelevant to her. As if she were a piece of furniture, not the woman who would live in that home. He simply turned back to chatting about renovations, furniture, how much sunlight the balcony got in the mornings. Relaxed, cheerful, completely at ease with the idea of locking her out of ownership and out of power. Kesha watched his confident posture, his easy smile, and wondered if she had ever truly known him at all. Did he really intend to buy the apartment without her name on it? Did he plan to tell her after the fact, framing it as simpler, temporary, practical? Would he forget to add her to the title later? Or intentionally never do it, leaving her with nothing? Fear tangled with anger. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe he would add her later. Maybe he just wanted to streamline the process. But then, why hide it? Why not even glance at her? Why pretend that nothing of consequence had been said? She bit her lip hard, fighting tears. Not now. Not here. Hold yourself together. The meeting drags on. Another 40 minutes passed. Discussions about appraisers, document timelines, move-out dates. Carlos remained professional, patient. Marcus was assertive, businesslike, and Kesha felt herself shrinking. Becoming hollow like a woman fading out of her own life? Is that what she was to him? After 15 years, a dependent, a silent shadow, a pet to feed, shelter, and expect gratitude from. 15 years of meals cooked, laundry folded, floors scrubbed, moods tolerated, hopes swallowed, dreams buried. 15 years of trying. And this was her value in his eyes. A woman who didn't matter. When Carlos brought out his laptop to show the preliminary contract, he and Marcus bent over the screen, talking in low tones. Two men shaping a future she was supposed to live in but not shape. Kesha watched them, her insides trembling. Then it happened. Carlos paused. His expression shifted. He glanced toward her carefully, almost thoughtfully. Then he turned to Marcus and asked, quietly but clearly,
Ella no sabe que los documentos estarán solo a tu nombre, ¿verdad?
She doesn't know the papers will be drafted only in your name, right? Kesha's breath froze. Time stopped. Marcus didn't even blink. He chuckled. Actually chuckled. And waved his hand dismissively. What difference does it make? She's not paying attention. She understands nothing. And honestly, it's none of her business. I earn the money, I pay, and I decide. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. So don't worry. Carlos nodded slowly, though something like discomfort flickered across his face. Still, he said nothing and returned to the screen. But Kesha felt something explode inside her. Shock, pain, humiliation, rage, all swirling in a tight knot that made it hard to breathe. None of her business. She just lives and enjoys. I decide. 15 years. 15 years, she waited for him to soften, to come back to her, to remember the man he used to be. And he couldn't even bother telling her that the condo, their supposed shared condo, would legally belong only to him. Kesha clenched her jaw so tightly the muscles burned. But she didn't allow even a ghost of emotion to show on her face. She kept sitting there, quiet, obedient, invisible. Exactly the way he expected. Exactly the way she'd taught herself to survive. The meeting finally wrapped up. Marcus and Carlos exchanged numbers and agreed to contact each other in a couple of days to schedule the notary appointment. Carlos was warm and polite as he led them to the door, shaking Marcus's hand and offering Kesha an encouraging smile. The elevator ride down felt weightless and suffocating at the same time. Marcus hummed to himself, content, proud, oblivious. Outside, the spring sun glowed on the pavement. Children played in the distance. Couples strolled under blossoming trees. Life looked peaceful, normal, ordinary. But inside Kesha, a storm was tearing her apart. They got into the car. Marcus started the engine, turned on upbeat pop music, and grinned. Well, Kesha? Amazing place, right? I told you we'd find something good. And that Spanish guy finally, someone reasonable, dropped the price fast. I handled it pretty well, didn't I? Kesha stared out the window. Her rage simmered quietly, but her voice, when it emerged, was calm. Too calm. Yes, it's a nice apartment. See? Marcus drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. A week from now, we'll sign the preliminary contract, make the deposit, and boom done. In a month or two, we'll move in. You can start planning renovations if you want. Though honestly, everything looks perfect already. It was all she could manage. He kept talking, rambling about furniture, budgets, paint colors, completely unaware that she was replaying every word she overheard in Carlos's living room. Documents will be drafted only in your name. She doesn't understand. None of her business. Each phrase was a blade, slicing deeper. Kesha had lived inside a lie for years, calling it marriage, calling it partnership when in reality, Marcus had kept her like a compliant, silent helper. A housekeeper with a wedding band. Someone to cook, clean, listen, nod. Someone who didn't matter. Nausea climbed up her throat. She shut her eyes, struggling not to crumble. Not now, not in front of him. Think, breathe. What now? Back home, the breaking point. Marcus flopped onto the sofa as soon as they entered the apartment. Remote in hand, already absorbed in a talk show. Laughter filled the room. Kesha walked into the kitchen, poured herself water, and drained the glass in one shaking gulp. Her hands trembled violently. She leaned against the counter, staring out at the dull, gray courtyard below. What now? What should she do? If she confronted him, he would have explanations ready. Oh, it's just temporary. Oh, it's for taxes. Oh, I'll add you later. Why are you worried? Oh, you don't understand these things. Don't stress. And part of her, a part that had been trained for years, might even believe it. But not anymore. She had heard him. She had heard the contempt in his voice. He hadn't hidden a thing because he was so certain she would never know. Kesha straightened. Enough. Enough of being soft. Enough of being invisible. Enough of swallowing truth to preserve his comfort. She walked into the living room. Marcus was laughing loudly at the television, completely at ease. She stopped in the doorway, looking at him not as a wife, but as a witness finally ready to speak. This man had planned to deceive her, to strip her of ownership, to leave her powerless. And he believed she would never find out. Marcus, she said. He didn't look up. I need to talk to you. Kesha, later, please. I'm watching something. Before, she would have apologized and left quietly. But not today. No, she said, her voice steady in a way that made him finally look up. We're talking now. He blinked, disoriented, irritated. What's going on with you? Did something happen? Something did happen. She took a step forward. Tell me, Marcus. Whose name are you planning to put the deed in? Confusion flickered across his face. He hadn't expected this. Not from her. In both of ours, naturally, he said quickly. But now she knew how easily he lied. Why? The question left Kesha's lips before she even realized she had spoken. Marcus's expression hardened. What do you mean? Why? What nonsense are you talking about now? But she didn't look away. She held his gaze steady, unblinking while her heart pounded hard enough to bruise her ribs. It was terrifying to confront him. Terrifying to refuse to shrink. Terrifying to demand the truth. But she had crossed that line already. There was no going back. Kurt suggested putting everything under one owner's name. She said, voice trembling but firm. In your name. And you agreed. For the first time, Marcus's face twitched. His eyes narrowed. How do you? He faltered. Were you? Eavesdropping. I heard your conversation. But you don't understand. He stopped mid-sentence. Realization dawned on him slowly, painfully, like a man waking up to a nightmare. Don't understand. Kesha let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You're so sure about that? Silence fell, heavy, thick, uncomfortable. Marcus stared at her, as if seeing a stranger. Then, slowly, stiffly, he rose from the sofa. You know the language. His voice was a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Kesha didn't answer. She simply watched him, letting the silence force him to confront the truth. He ran a hand over his face, pacing half a step before turning sharply toward her. How long? He demanded. How long have you understood Spanish? What difference does it make? Kesha replied, stepping back instinctively. The real issue is what you intended to do. What deception? His voice rose. She flinched but didn't retreat. You were going to put the condo in your name, she said. You didn't even plan to tell me. You were just going to handle everything behind my back. I was simplifying the process. Marcus barked. Then I was going to add you. Everything would have been fine. Or maybe, she said quietly, every word cutting through the room like glass. You never intended to add me at all. Maybe it was convenient. Maybe keeping me dependent benefits you. Marcus threw up his hands. I slaved away for you for 15 years, paid for everything. And now you accuse me of scheming to hurt you. Slaved? The word stung. Her voice wavered, but she stood her ground. And what did I do all those years? Lie around. I worked, Marcus. I kept our home running. I tolerated your neglect. What neglect? He snapped, stepping closer. I provided for you. I took care of you. Kesha felt something break inside her finally, irrevocably. You didn't even think it was necessary to ask my opinion about the apartment, she said. You decided everything for both of us. I was just expected to smile and agree. Yes, he shot back. Because I understand these things better. You know nothing about real estate. And you know nothing about how to treat a wife. The words escaped her before she could process them. Marcus froze. His face reddened, veins standing out at his temples. For a moment he looked unstable, angry, and strangely frightened. As if his world had begun to crack too. Listen carefully, he said slowly, as if she were a child. You overheard a conversation. You didn't understand. And now you're throwing a tantrum. I told you this was just to simplify paperwork. We would have added you later. But if you don't trust me, then Kesha cut him off. Because I heard what you said to Kurt. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. With fury. You said, she doesn't understand anyway. None of her business. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. That's what you said. Silence struck the room like a blow. Marcus's mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time in their entire marriage, Kesha saw him speechless. I didn't mean that, he muttered at last. What did you mean then? She stepped closer. Now he stepped back. Explain it to me. Explain how you could talk about me or wife to a stranger, like I'm an object. Something without thoughts. Without rights. Kesha, I got heated, he said, trying to soften his tone. It slipped out. It happens. You know I didn't want to offend you. Didn't want to. She swallowed hard, forcing back tears. You've been offending me for years, Marcus. Every dismissive word, every decision you made without me, every dream you crushed before it even began. I kept hoping you'd change. That you were stressed, tired, overwhelmed. But now I know. Her voice cracked. You simply never respected me. That's not true. He shouted. Then why didn't you tell me the apartment would be in your name? Her voice grew louder, stronger, unstoppable. Why hide it? Why discuss it with a stranger before discussing it with me? Marcus paced like a cornered animal. Then he spun toward her. And where did you get the idea to learn Spanish? He snapped. How long have you been hiding that? Why didn't you tell me? What else are you hiding, huh? Kesha blinked in shock. Of all the things she expected, this wasn't it. I didn't hide it, she said softly. I just didn't tell you because I knew you'd laugh. Like you laughed at floral design. At yoga, at anything I cared about. Don't exaggerate, he scoffed. I just told the truth. You start things and never finish. I never finished, she shouted, startling even herself. Because you killed every piece of desire in me. Her voice shook the walls. And in that moment she realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. Kesha had never shouted before. Not once in 15 years. But now the words poured out of her, sharp, shaking with years of buried pain, every time. I tried anything. You called it stupid, useless, childish. You convinced me. I wasn't capable of anything. And I believed you. I believed I was weak, worthless, a burden. I never said that, Marcus protested, but even he sounded unsure of himself. Maybe not in those words, she said, hugging her arms around herself as though trying to hold her heart together. But that's exactly what you meant. You made sure I felt small. A tremor rippled through her. You know what's worst? I started believing I deserved that treatment. I convinced myself I should be grateful you stayed with me at all. That without you, I was nothing. Marcus stared at the floor. For once, he had no quick retort, no sarcastic quip, no confident comeback. Say something, she whispered, exhausted. He lifted his head. There was no fury in his eyes now, only confusion, irritation, and something that almost resembled fear. What do you want to hear? He asked flatly. That I'm a bad husband? That I hurt you? Fine, maybe I did. But I tried. I worked like a dog for us, so you had everything. A home, clothes, vacations. And now you're calling that disrespect. Kesha shook her head slowly. Respect is asking my opinion. Respect is considering my wishes. Respect is not discussing me with strangers like I'm an object. How long are we going to drag this out? Marcus snapped, temper flaring again. I told you it slipped. Kurt asked something, and I answered. You're making a big scene out of nothing. Kesha's voice cracked into a bitter smile. People speak their truth when they don't think. And you said exactly what you truly think of me. Marcus's fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, Kesha's stomach flipped, fear sparking like static. But he didn't move toward her. He turned away, staring out the window as if the street could provide answers he didn't have. You're exaggerating, he muttered. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm a good husband. I provide. I don't drink. I don't cheat. Plenty of women would be happy to be in your place. And plenty of people in my place would have left long ago, Kesha said quietly. He spun around sharply, eyes flashing dangerously. What did you say? I said many women would have left long ago. She repeated it slowly, steadily. Because living with someone who doesn't respect you, who treats you like a burden, is unbearable. You're threatening divorce. Marcus stepped closer, face twisted. Seriously. Over one phrase you eavesdropped on. Not over one phrase. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. Over 15 years in which I was invisible in my own home. Over the fact that you planned to own the apartment alone. Over the fact that even now you don't understand what you did wrong. I didn't deprive you of anything, he yelled. I was simplifying paperwork. You were deceiving me. She screamed back, her voice breaking. Because you thought I was stupid. That I'd never find out. That I couldn't understand. Because you're used to me being silent. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, both raw and shaking. Outside, life went on as if nothing were happening. Cars honking, children shouting, neighbors going about their day. But inside this apartment, their marriage was splitting open. I don't understand what's happening, Marcus muttered, rubbing his forehead. For the first time, he sounded almost lost. We lived normally. Everything was fine. Where is this coming from? It was fine for you, Kesha whispered. Not for me. Not for a long time. She swallowed the sob rising in her throat. I kept silent. I endured. I hoped you would notice me again. Hoped you'd remember who I was when we met. Hoped you'd love me again. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. But you stopped loving me a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. Marcus stood there, staring. His face slowly shifted, anger draining away, leaving confusion, guilt, and a hollow emptiness. Maybe so, he said finally. The words landed like a hammer. Maybe you're right. He exhaled shakily. I don't know anymore, Kesha. I'm tired. Tired of work. Tired of stress. Tired of everything. And you were always just there. In the background. Comfortable, familiar. The words stung more than any insult. He had told her the truth. Accidentally, carelessly but honestly. She had been background noise in her own marriage. I didn't think you were unhappy, Marcus murmured, finally lifting his head. I thought everything suited you. Nothing suited me, Kesha whispered. But you never asked. He nodded slowly, walked back to the sofa, and sank into it with the weight of someone who had suddenly aged. He covered his face with his hands. Kesha stood in the middle of the room, no strength left to scream. No energy left to plead. Only a quiet emptiness remained. And a strange, unexpected clarity. What now? Marcus asked from behind his fingers. I don't know, she said honestly, but we're not buying that apartment. Not from Kurt, and definitely not the way you planned. His head snapped up. So the deal is off. Yes, her answer came firm, steady, unshaken. I won't agree to any purchase that puts the deed only in your name. And I need time to think about us. About whether there's even a point in continuing. You want a divorce? He didn't ask, he stated. I don't know what I want. She walked to the window, gazing at the courtyard, the playground. The benches where elderly women chatted. The world that kept spinning even as hers cracked open. I only know I can't continue like this. I won't. And what will you do? A sharp, mocking note crept into his voice. He lifted his chin. Leave, rent a room somewhere on that tiny salary, live alone in some dump on the outskirts. She turned toward him, catching the familiar mask sliding back into place. Control. Intimidation, superiority. Before, it would have worked, but not anymore. Maybe, she said calmly. But it will be my dump, my life, my choice. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. He exhaled sharply, threw up his hands. Do whatever you want. He stood abruptly. I'm going to Jamal's. I'll spend the night there. Clear my head. He paused in the doorway. And you think about your decisions. Maybe you'll come to your senses. He disappeared into the bedroom. She heard drawers slam, hangers clatter, zippers yank. Then he stormed past her without a glance and slammed the front door behind him. Silence spread through the apartment like a fog. Kesha walked to the window and watched him exit the building. Get into the car and drive away. Only when he turned the corner, gone did her legs give out. She slid to the floor and sobbed. She cried for the years she lost, for the love she gave, for the woman she silenced inside herself. She cried for fear of the unknown and the relief of finally seeing the truth. The tears felt endless, cleansing, unstoppable. Eventually, the sobs faded. She wiped her face with her sleeve, stood, and walked to the bedroom. The closet was a mess. Marcus had pulled things out carelessly, leaving chaos behind. Without thinking, Kesha folded the scattered linens, closed the doors, restored order. Then she reached for her notebook and Spanish textbook. She sat on the bed and opened to the last page. Tomorrow she would call Kurt. She would apologize for the wasted time. She would tell him they wouldn't be buying the apartment. And after that, she didn't know. But for the first time in years, the uncertainty didn't paralyze her. It felt like freedom. She took a pen and wrote in Spanish on a new page. Soy más fuerte de lo que pensaba. Puedo, con esto. Voy a lograrlo. Asterisk, I am stronger than I thought. I can handle this. I will succeed. Asterisk, outside, the sun was bleeding into the horizon, painting the sky with pink and orange flames. Kesha watched the colors shift and realized tomorrow would be her first real day in years. Her day, her life. The next morning, Kesha woke early, even though sleep had been fractured and restless. She splashed cold water on her face and stared into the mirror. Her eyes were tired, her skin was pale, but her gaze was different. Bright, firm, certain. She brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table with her phone. Her hand trembled as she dialed Kurt's number. 1 ring, 2, 3, see? Chigami, came the familiar accented voice. Kesha inhaled deeply. Then, in clear Spanish, she began, Carlos, soy Kesha. Ayer vimos su apartamento con mi esposo. A quiet pause. Then genuine surprise. Kesha usted, ¿habla español? Yes, she exhaled. A weight slid off her shoulders. I'm sorry I didn't say so yesterday. The circumstances weren't right. I understand, he replied softly. So, you heard everything between me and your husband. Every word. Another silence. Longer. He sighed. I'm truly sorry. I shouldn't have agreed to that scheme. But he was insistent, and I assumed it was a private family matter. But Yusai felt uncomfortable. You aren't to blame, Kesha said. She looked out at the gray morning sky. I'm calling to say we won't be buying the apartment. I apologize for your wasted time. Wait, Carlos said quickly. But you liked the apartment. A lot. Do you want to buy it yourself? Kesha blinked. What? If you want it, he continued gently, you can buy it without him. I don't have that kind of money, she admitted. I'm an accountant. My salary is small. I can't afford something like this. And a mortgage? A loan. I've never handled anything like that, she whispered. Marcus always made the financial decisions. Listen, Carlos said, his voice kind, almost fatherly. If you truly want an apartment, if you need a place of your own, we can find a way. I can lower the price. I can wait while you apply for financing. I'm not in a rush. A small warmth flickered inside her fragile, but real. Why? Why would you help me? She asked quietly. Because yesterday, he said softly, I saw my daughter in you. She went through something similar. A controlling husband, decisions made behind her back. She left him, created a new life. She's happy now, and if I can help someone else take their first step, I will. Tears pricked her eyes, but she held steady. Thank you, she whispered. I need time to think, but thank you. Take all the time you need, he said. And if you need any help with paperwork or legal questions, call me. I know an excellent lawyer. They said goodbye. Kesha set the phone down and covered her face with both hands. Buy the apartment herself. Without Marcus, the idea felt impossible, terrifying and yet thrilling. Her own home, her own space, her own life. The days that followed, the next few days passed in a haze. Marcus returned after 3 days silent, brooding. He slept on the sofa, left early, came home late. They exchanged only the barest of words. It was as if they lived in two separate universes, sharing the same air. Kesha didn't push. She needed time too. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to breathe. She researched everything: mortgages, divorce, property division. She read forums late into the night, consulted lawyers online, calculated finances in a notebook she used to hide. The picture was complicated, but not hopeless. Legally, she was entitled to half of their current condo. Selling her share, or Marcus buying it from her, would give her enough for a down payment. With her stable job history, she could likely get a mortgage for the rest. A week later, she called Carlos again. "I want to try to buy the apartment," she said without hesitation. "But I'll need your patience. And your help. Both are available," he answered warmly. "Let's meet." They met in a small cafe near his building. Carlos arrived with a folder under his arm and a lawyer's phone number tucked inside. Over steaming cups of coffee, they discussed everything: price, deadlines, the mortgage process. Carlos willingly lowered the price by 10%. "I want to help," he said gently. "It matters more to me that the apartment goes to a good person, not that I squeeze out every dollar." "But first," he hesitated, then continued, "you need to resolve things with your husband. While you're married, he must legally consent to major financial decisions." "I know." Kesha squeezed her cup. "I'm filing for divorce this week." Saying it aloud was terrifying and liberating. A truth finally given voice. That afternoon, she booked a consultation with the lawyer Carlos recommended. A calm, sharp-eyed woman listened to her story and laid out a clear plan. File for divorce. Demand property division. Without a prenup, the court almost always splits assets equally. "How long will it take?" Kesha asked. 3 to 4 months longer, if he fights it. Kesha wrote everything down. Then the lawyer asked the only question that mattered. "Are you sure you want a divorce? Emotionally, financially, morally, this won't be easy." Kesha looked her straight in the eye. "Yes," she said, "I've never been more sure." She waited until evening. Marcus came home at 7:30. They ate in silence. The room felt tense enough to crack. Finally, she set down her fork. "Marcus, we need to talk." He looked up. In his eyes she saw not anger, but resignation he already knew. "I'm filing for divorce," she said clearly. "Tomorrow? I want you to know." He leaned back. "So you decided?" "Yes." "And nothing will change your mind?" "No." He exhaled slowly, rubbed his face, then nodded. "All right. Maybe you're right. Maybe we really aren't on the same path. I thought about it all week. We've been strangers for a long time, Kesha. I just didn't want to admit it." "I didn't want to either," she said softly. "But we can't pretend anymore. Are we splitting the condo?" "Yes. I want my half." "Fine, let's not sell it," he said. "I'll buy your share. We'll get an appraisal market price." It was fair. She was grateful he didn't try to fight. "Agreed," she said. They sat quietly a few minutes more. Then Marcus stood, packed 2 bags, and paused in the doorway. "I'll stay at Jamal's. I'll find a place later. Call if you need anything for the paperwork." "Okay." He hesitated, as if wanting to say something more, but he didn't. He nodded and left. The door closed softly. And for the first time in years, silence felt peaceful. The divorce was long and exhausting: papers, courts, appraisals, but Marcus didn't fight. Not once. 4 months later, the marriage was formally dissolved. Kesha received her half of the condo's value, more money than she'd ever held before, yet only half of what she had emotionally invested over 15 years. But these months were not wasted. She found a new job and international company. A position requiring foreign language skills. At the interview, "Show us your Spanish," they said. Kesha spoke fluently, confidently. The interviewer's eyebrows shot up. "Where did you learn?" "On my own," she smiled. "Evenings?" 8 months. Impressive, the HR manager said. We value determination. The job was dynamic, important. For the first time, she felt respected. Simultaneously, the bank approved her mortgage. Carlos waited patiently, ever rushing her, never losing faith. You're working hard, he told her once. You deserve this. When all documents were signed and the keys placed in her palm, Kesha stood in her empty condo, and felt tears fill her eyes. Huge windows, bright rooms, view of the park. Her home, only hers. Carlos left her some furniture. The rest she bought slowly, lovingly choosing each item with care. She decorated the balcony, hung her own artwork, arranged books on shelves. Every choice felt like a declaration. My life, my rules, my voice. She enrolled in professional accounting courses, international certification. There she met new people, new perspectives, and one man who quietly changed everything, Julian, 40. Kind smile, warm eyes. He sat beside her during the third class. May I? He asked. Of course, she said. They studied together, then had coffee together, then walked through parks and shared their stories. You're remarkable, Julian told her once. Not everyone has the courage to start over. At my age, she laughed gently. I'm 42. Exactly, he smiled. It's the perfect age. Everything ahead of you. Most people never dare to change, no matter how unhappy they are. I was afraid to, she admitted. But living in fear was worse. Their connection grew slowly, naturally. Warmth replacing caution, trust replacing scars. One evening, sitting on her balcony with glasses of wine and the sunset glowing above them, Julian took her hand. I'm grateful I met you, he said softly. Me too, she whispered. And this time, her tears were happy. 1 year later, a full year had passed since she heard that fateful sentence in Carlos's apartment. She doesn't understand anyway. And now, standing in her condo, watching the city shimmer with evening lights, Kesha finally understood the truth. What felt like an ending was actually a beginning of a life where she chose her path, where she spoke her truth, where she trusted her strength, where she believed in herself. The road had been hard, terrifying, lonely at times, but she had walked it. She had rebuilt herself, piece by piece, step by step. Her phone buzzed. Julian's name lit up the screen. Hi, she answered, smiling. Yes, I'm home. Of course, come over. I'll be waiting. She hung up, looked out at the glowing city, and breathed deeply. Ahead of her stretched a whole new life, her life, and she was finally ready to live it fully, boldly, joyfully. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this story. If it touched your heart, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love knowing where all you beautiful listeners are tuning in from. And if you'd like to support my work a little extra, you can send a small donation. I share new life stories every single day,